Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well, you know how that goes. Some people's freedom fighters are other people's terrorists, and some people's volunteers in Ukraine are other people's mercenaries and terrorists in Ukraine. This video will have to do with the mercenaries or the volunteers in Ukraine, the foreign volunteers, and how they're treated, how they go and operate, their leadership or commanders, and the number of people volunteered for Ukraine, how many people are still there. And that's not a beautiful picture, but war in general is not a beautiful picture to start with. So this first article, I have two articles to discuss, comes from Ukrinform, and it is from today, December 4th, 2022. 5 Georgian volunteer fighters killed near Bakhmut. Volunteers from Georgia, the former Soviet Socialist Republic, not Georgia, United States. So on December 3rd, 5 Georgian citizens who fought as volunteers in the armed forces of Ukraine were killed near Bakhmut. And I'm quoting, Georgian volunteer fighters Avto Rurna, Rurua, Roland, Kvartzakelia, Romeo, and Juliet, Pikhaya, Mareb Aladashvili, and Badri Markelia were killed in the fight against the Russian invaders near Bakhmut on December 3rd. Eternal memory and glory to the heroes, the Embassy of Ukraine on Georgia posted on Facebook. So this is about these 5 Georgians that perished, and the other article that I have here talks about the International Defense Legion of Ukraine, this volunteer organization. So let's start with the beginning, right? This article comes from Business Insider, so this is not a Ukrainian or a Russian media outlet, obviously. I would call it sympathetic to the Ukrainians, obviously, being a Western media outlet. This is the title. The death of an American soldier fighting in Ukraine exposes chaos and dysfunction in the Foreign Legion. And we hear that Brian Young, a U.S. Army veteran who volunteered in Ukraine Foreign Legion, died in July. And you might say, well, so what? We're in December. Well, the problem is his partner, his girlfriend, is going to reveal some stories about how this veteran and others in Ukraine are treated. His partner told Insider that she believes Young's death in Ukraine was preventable. Now, the last word is very weird. Preventable. Well, yeah, it could have been preventable. Don't go over there and preventable. But she doesn't mean that. She means that the lack of training of these volunteers in Ukraine and the commanding officers, or commander over there in this case, was a piece of nothingness, including the fact that they were disorganized in attacking or conducting operations. The widow, alongside other soldiers, told Insider about mismanagement and dysfunction in the Legion. So it seems like they lived in Tbilisi, which is the capital of Georgia, and he left. He wanted to go to Ukraine to defend the country from full-scale Russian invasion. So he was the 51-year-old Army veteran from California. Said he needed to go because it was his duty to protect the free world. Her name is Lipka, his girlfriend, told Insider in a series of interviews. So he went his duty to protect the free world. You want to see, Mr. Young, what free world is? If I say something right now, right here, you know how free I am? And if I go, let's say, go to be employed somewhere, right? And go to work and say something, you know how quickly I'm kicked out? I'm free, yeah, I'm free to be kicked out and then not hired again because you need recommendations, if you know what I mean. and many others. Go outside and say something about certain things and you're gonna see how free you are. Unfortunately, we are taught to believe that we live in a free world. We don't live in a free world. I think we live in a freer world than others. That means we can do more than they can do. But you can't do many things that we were told we can't do. Okay? So I'm sorry that a lot of people, I think, still live under this value impression assessment of the world. And let's move on and see what's going on here. So this guy, Young, traveled to Kiev via the Turkish capital of Istanbul in March, roughly a month after Russian invasion of Ukraine started in February 24th. The 51-year-old served as a U.S. infantryman between November 1990 and April 2003 before being forced to retire due to injury. So he was in the army for 13 years. So now, International Defense Legion of Ukraine. You know that these guys are made out of people who fought in other areas. They mention here they have, some of them have experience, previously fought in countries like Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan. You know, those, because NATO defended the free world. So it says here that in total almost 20,000 legionnaires, 20,000 legionnaires from 52 nations answered the call to arms in the first weeks of the war. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba said at the time. Around 3,000 of them were U.S. citizens. A top defense official at the Washington, D.C. embassy said in March. So almost 20,000. I remember when they reported that and I didn't believe it. And I still don't believe it. But they would probably want to show, support and so on. But even the Russians said that there were about 6,000, I think, that they say they counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now, this gentleman died in a very poor situation because of poor preparation of the field operation. Young was part of the 517th Battalion of the Ivan Bohun Brigade, which was overseen by the GUR Legion, run by Ukrainian intelligence. It's very important to know that Ukrainian intelligence, we're going to get a name of the guy in charge of Mr. Young and his partners. It says that the soldiers in this section are all often highly skilled and deployed in smaller groups that operate right on the front. Still, the Legion appeared anything but professional. In June, Young texted Lipka, his girlfriend, "It has been a mess where I am. Most of the foreign volunteers left. There are only a few of us left." So that was, and he died in July 18 or something like that in Donetsk region. Now another American soldier, he just goes by AG, told Insider that their mission was a disaster from the start, adding that the group had narrowly escaped death multiple times in the days before. We knew we were told to go out again. When we were told to go out again, in my mind I knew someone was going to die, AG told Insider. Well, might happen. I mean, that's the risk. So that's one thing. Let's move on and find another guy here, a medic, Skywalker, Luke Skywalker Lushizin. A medic. He also died during the same outage with Young. And then she says here that a preventable death. Preventable death, I don't know how that could have been preventable if you just stay outside. Now they say that the commander of this unit was an Ukrainian. His name is Ruslan Miroshnichenko. Was reckless and often drunk. And He says they being the fighters that spoke with this woman, they also claim that Miroshnichenko was a heavy drinker who often encouraged others to drink before going out on missions. At one point, Young's battalion destroyed the local bar, and police had to get involved. Well, when Miroshnichenko called Lipka to discuss funeral arrangements on the phone, the commander sounded drunk, she said. Well, he couldn't take it. He was too hurt, I guess. Well, and they also tell us about how much training they had. So in the subtitle here it says poor organization and reckless commanders. Lipka isn't the only person who has raised questions over the way the foreign fighters were treated in Ukraine and the dangers they were put in, even while knowing the risks. Foreign volunteers leaving Ukraine due to poor organization, lack of equipment and reckless commanders have already made headlines. In April, Insider talked to 2 Germans who had gone to Ukraine to volunteer to fight and ended up with a different outfit. The Georgian Legion made up of volunteers mostly from the ex-Soviet country. They described arriving at barracks that they were barren and disorganized and an overall sense of chaos. Catastrophe. Tobias, one of the men, told Insider, and I'm quoting again, "There's no organization, no organized training. Everyone just wants to kill the Russians. Neither had any military experience, unlike people like Young." And it says here that meanwhile an investigation published by the Kiev Independent in August found that some commanders in the GUR were sending men on suicide missions, sexually harassing female medics and threatening soldiers with a gun. One commander, a Polish ex-criminal named Sasha Kuczynski, was also a heavy drinker and sometimes forced soldiers in his troops to help him loot shops, the Kiev Independent reported. A bunch of wannabes playing with people's lives, one soldier who had since left Ukraine said of the Legion's leadership. Any surprises? None here. None here. Everything what this guy said is in both sides, and that remains the reason, supports the reason why, because we are human. That's how we act. More or less, you say, well, these guys were pieces of shit. Yes, they were. I'm talking about the commanders, drunk commanders, and behavior as they behave. I told you, each and every army is made out of humans, and we act in a certain predictable way under certain pressure and circumstances. These guys, do you think they go over there to dance? They know they will be killed eventually. I mean, what's the proportion? And they act the way they act. And when you see so much disorganized commanders and the whole operation with these guys mostly drunk all the time. Now you got the Pole over there, ex-criminal, and they were blaming the Wagner group from employing ex-criminals, going to the prisons and trying the colonies and hiring ex-criminals. How about this guy, Kuczynski? Sasha Kuczynski, I think he was his name. And not only, I'm pretty sure that a lot of them did that and were of this kind. A lot of like Young, yes, I want to save the free world versus these guys. Let's kill the Ruskies. It's true, but you have to do it with brains. But this is it. Going to the bars, drinking heavily, harassing women. Why? Because you have a gun. Do you think that these guys, if they would be able to invade Russia per se, and they enter a town, do you think they're going to treat people with... So when you hear the Russians doing this and doing that, raping, and do you think these guys will be like gentlemen over there? Oh, you have a piano, I can play the piano sonata or something, right? Or maybe you want me to, I don't know, it's just a violin, maybe play with that. It's just, that's the way it is. And this guy, Young, went over there with values and a free world and so on, and got to be commanded by those guys. It's like you go to work and you see that, let's say your boss or bosses are just mediocrities at best, and you think, a lot of money is wasted here. Well, on the battlefield, a lot of people's lives are lost because of these pieces of wannabes. Well, thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.